"I know where you buried her," the little girl told the millionaire, but when they discovered the truth, everyone was shocked. The heavy silence of the wake was broken by small, hesitant steps that echoed through the St. Joseph's funeral home. It was a stuffy March afternoon in Havenwood, Vermont, and the air conditioning struggled against the summer heat, seeping through the cracks of the old windows. People dressed in black conversed in whispers, some dabbing at discreet tears over the passing of Dorothy Fitzgerald, a beloved local merchant. Lily Anderson, only 4 years old, emerged from between the wreaths like a disturbing apparition. Her brown hair was tangled. Her clothes were dirty with earth and torn at the edges. Her bare feet left small prints on the red carpet of the main corridor. No one knew how she had gotten in, but everyone stopped to watch the ragged little girl who was completely out of place in the solemn environment. "I know where he buried her," Lily said in her high, clear voice, pointing directly at Arthur Monroe. The 52-year-old textile magnate was standing by the coffin, paying his last respects, when he felt all eyes turn to him. Arthur was known for his elegant posture and well-tailored suits. His textile mill employed half the population of Havenwood, and his name was synonymous with respect in the region. Now, however, his face visibly paled. "Child, what are you saying?" asked Mrs. Gable, an elderly woman who had known every family in town for decades. Lily didn't take her eyes off Arthur. "He buried the blonde lady in the backyard of the yellow house. I saw it. She had a pretty dress, and he dug a really deep hole." An uncomfortable murmur filled the hall. Some people began to shift restlessly in their chairs. Arthur cleared his throat and approached the girl cautiously. "Child, I don't know who you are, but you shouldn't be here alone," he said, trying to maintain his composure. "Where are your parents?" "Grandma Genevieve disappeared," Lily replied, tears now in her eyes. "It's been a long time since she came home." Helen Croft, a social worker from the town hall, was present at the wake and approached the situation. She was a 38-year-old woman, experienced in dealing with abandoned children. Something in the seriousness with which Lily spoke caught her professional attention. "Lily, isn't it?" said Helen, crouching down to be at the girl's level. "I know you. You lived with Mrs. Genevieve on Independence Street." The girl nodded vigorously. "Grandma said we were going on a trip, but she left me at the park and never came back. I've been sleeping in the church." The embarrassment at the wake was palpable. Arthur looked around, noticing the whispers and curious expressions of the people. Some began to wonder if there was any truth to the child's words. "The yellow house is at the end of St. Sebastian Street," Lily continued, ignoring the adult's discomfort. "There's a cherry tree in the yard and the gate is green, but it's peeling. I saw him digging in the middle of the night." Helen felt a shiver. The description was too specific for a child to be making up. She knew the house Lily was describing, an old property that had belonged to the Monroe family for decades. "Mr. Monroe," Helen said calmly, "perhaps it would be best if we discussed this in private." The businessman hesitated for a moment, looking at the curious faces around him. His reputation was being publicly questioned by a 4-year-old, and every second of silence seemed to confirm some guilt. "I have nothing to hide," he replied firmly. "But I agree this is not the appropriate place for this kind of conversation." Lily clung to Helen's skirt. The blonde lady was very pretty. She always cried when she came to see me in secret. She brought me cookies and dolls. The girl's words created another moment of heavy silence. Arthur felt his heart race. There was something in that description that deeply disturbed him, something that touched on memories he preferred to keep buried. "Let's get out of here," Helen said, realizing the situation was becoming unbearable for everyone present. As she guided Lily out of the wake, Helen noticed that the girl was carrying a small cloth bag tied around her waist. It seemed to be her only possession. The child looked one last time at Arthur before leaving, and in that look there was a mixture of innocence and knowledge that sent a chill down the businessman's spine. "Mr. Monroe," said the priest who was presiding over the wake, approaching him discreetly, "perhaps it would be wise to accompany the social worker. Children sometimes see things that we adults prefer to ignore." Arthur nodded mechanically, but his mind was elsewhere. Lily's words had awakened memories he had struggled to forget. The yellow house, the blonde woman, the yard with the cherry tree. Outside the funeral home, Helen tried to calm Lily, who was crying softly. The afternoon was fading, and soon it would be night. The girl had nowhere to go, and the situation was becoming more complex by the moment. "Lily, can you tell me more about Grandma Genevieve?" Helen asked gently. "She's not my real grandma," the girl replied, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "But she found me when I was very little and took care of me. She said my mummy went away to heaven." Arthur, who had followed them outside, heard this last sentence and felt as if the ground was moving beneath his feet. There was something terribly familiar in that story, something that connected dots he had never imagined could be linked. Night began to fall over Havenwood, and with it came questions that would change the lives of everyone involved forever. Dawn arrived without Arthur having managed to sleep a wink. Lying in his king-size bed in the master bedroom of his mansion in Havenwood's most exclusive neighborhood, he replayed every word Lily had said at the wake. The heavy curtains blocked the outside light, but couldn't stop the memories from invading his consciousness like persistent ghosts. At 5 in the morning, he gave up trying to sleep. He put on a robe and went down to his office, where he spent the next few hours looking out the window toward the mountains that surrounded the town. His mind constantly returned to the yellow house on St. Sebastian Street, a property he had inherited from his father that had remained closed for 5 years. On the other side of town, Helen had also spent a sleepless night. After finding temporary shelter for Lily at St. Clara's support house, she went home, but couldn't shake the feeling that there was something important in the girl's accusations. In her 15 years as a social worker, she had learned to distinguish between childhood fantasies and accounts based on real experiences. At 7 in the morning, Helen arrived at the support house to talk to Lily again. She found the girl awake, sitting on the bed, drawing on a piece of paper one of the caregivers had given her. "Good morning, Lily. How did you sleep?" "I dreamed of Grandma Genevieve," the girl replied. Without looking up from her drawing, she was crying and saying she couldn't come back to get me. Helen sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the drawing. It was a yellow house with a tree in the yard, exactly as Lily had described at the wake. Next to the house was a female figure with long hair and a dress. "Lily, can you tell me more about the blonde lady who used to visit you?" The girl finally looked up. She was very pretty and smelled like flowers. She always brought tasty things for me to eat and would play with me, but she got sad when she had to leave. "Do you know her name?" "She said I could call her Aunt Cordelia." The name hit Helen like a lightning bolt. Cordelia Monroe, Arthur's wife, had disappeared 5 years ago. Officially, she had traveled to Burlington for medical treatment and never returned. Arthur always said she had decided to start a new life in another city, but there were never any details about her whereabouts. "Lily, when was the last time you saw Aunt Cordelia?" The girl thought for a moment, counting on her fingers. "A long time ago, before Grandma Genevieve disappeared. She was very sad that day and gave me a gold bracelet." "Do you still have that bracelet?" Lily opened her small cloth bag and took out a delicate gold bracelet with 2 letters engraved on it. C.M. Helen felt her heart race. Those were Cordelia Monroe's initials. She asked to examine the piece of jewelry more closely and noticed it was an expensive piece, probably custom-made. At that very moment, Arthur was in his office at the mill, trying to focus on monthly reports, when his cell phone rang. It was Helen. "Mr. Monroe, I need to talk to you urgently about what happened yesterday." "I already told you I have nothing to hide," he replied, but his voice trembled slightly. "Lily mentioned a woman named Cordelia, and she has a bracelet with the initials CM. The phone slipped from Arthur's hand and fell to the floor with a dry thud. His hands trembled as he bent down to pick it up. Cordelia had always worn an identical bracelet, a gift he had given her on their first wedding anniversary. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "At St. Clara's support house. Can you come here?" "I'm on my way." Arthur cancelled all his meetings for the day and left the mill as if he were running from something. During the drive to the support house, his mind was bombarded with memories he had tried to suppress. Cordelia had changed a lot in the last few months before her disappearance. She would be gone for hours, sometimes entire days, always with vague excuses about visiting friends or shopping in other cities. When he arrived at the support house, Helen was waiting for him in the administration office. Lily was playing in the courtyard under the supervision of a caregiver. "Mr. Monroe, I need you to be honest with me. What happened to your wife, Cordelia?" Arthur sat down heavily in a chair. For 5 years, he had rehearsed this answer for himself, but now, faced with reality, the words seemed insufficient. "Cordelia left for treatment in Burlington. Our marriage was complicated. She wanted children, and I couldn't give them to her." "But she never arrived at the hospital, did she?" Arthur's silence was more eloquent than any answer. "Mr. Monroe, a 4-year-old doesn't invent specific details about a property and a woman who supposedly disappeared. Lily knew your wife." At that moment, Lily ran into the room, having escaped the caregiver's supervision. When she saw Arthur, she stopped abruptly and studied him with her large, expressive eyes. "You look like Aunt Cordelia," she said, tilting her head. "She always talked about a man who didn't smile anymore." The sentence struck Arthur in the chest like a stab wound. Cordelia had always accused him of having lost his joy for life, of having become bitter after discovering his infertility. "Lily," Helen said gently, "can you show Mr. Arthur the bracelet Aunt Cordelia gave you?" The girl opened her little bag and took out the golden bracelet. Arthur recognized it immediately. He had chosen the design himself at the jewelry store in downtown Havenwood. His hand trembled as he took the piece. "She said that one day someone would come for me," Lily said, watching the businessman's reaction. "She said I was special and that I would always be loved." "Why did she give you presents, Lily?" Helen asked. "Because I was the little daughter she always wanted to have," the girl answered naturally. "She said she chose me to be her family." Lily's words echoed in the silence of the room like a devastating revelation. Arthur understood in that moment that his wife had found the child he could never give her, and somehow this discovery had led to consequences he still couldn't fully comprehend. Helen watched Arthur's face, seeing the internal struggle unfolding in his expressions. There were secrets there, secrets that were about to come to light. "Mr. Monroe, I think it's time we visited the Yellow House." The businessman closed his eyes and nodded slowly, knowing there was no longer any escape from the past that haunted him. The Yellow House on St. Sebastian Street stood before them like a ghost from the past. The peeling paint on the exterior walls and the faded green gate confirmed every detail Lily had mentioned. Arthur parked his car in front of the property, his hands still trembling slightly on the steering wheel. "I haven't been here in 5 years, he murmured, more to himself than to Helen, who was beside him in the passenger seat. Lily had stayed at the support house, as Helen considered it inappropriate to expose the child to that situation. But before they left, the girl had made a disturbing observation. There are flowers planted on top of the place where he dug, white daisies. Now, as Arthur opened the rusty gate, Helen could see exactly what Lily had described. At the back of the yard, under the shade of the cherry tree, was a small garden of white daisies that stood out from the rest of the abandoned lot. "Mr. Monroe," Helen said calmly, "I think you'd better tell me the whole truth before we go any further." Arthur stopped in the middle of the yard, staring at the flowers. The afternoon sun cast long shadows that danced in the wind, and for a moment he could hear the echoes of voices from the past, Cordelia humming as she watered the plants, her laughter echoing through the empty walls of the house. "Cordelia used to come here in secret," he began, his voice heavy. "In the last few months before she left, I found out by accident once. I followed her and saw her taking care of a child here. Lily. Yes. But when I confronted Cordelia, she refused to explain. She just said she had found the girl abandoned and that a woman named Genevieve was helping her care for her informally." Helen watched the bed of daisies as Arthur spoke. The soil there seemed to have been turned over and replanted, unlike the rest of the yard, which was overgrown with weeds. "And what happened that night, Mr. Monroe? The night your wife died?" The question hit Arthur like a punch to the stomach. He turned to Helen, his face pale. "How do you know she's dead?" "Because a 4-year-old doesn't make up a story about seeing someone dig a grave. And because you just confirmed my suspicion." Arthur slumped onto a stone bench in the yard. The memories he had tried to suppress for 5 years began to flow like a broken dam. "I was worried because Cordelia had left home, saying she was going to Burlington. But something didn't feel right. I decided to come here to see if she was okay. When I arrived, I found the front door open and Cordelia lying at the bottom of the internal staircase." His voice broke. There was blood. A lot of blood. She had hit her head on the stone steps. She was already gone when I arrived. Helen felt a chill run down her spine. "And why didn't you call an ambulance? Why didn't you report the accident?" "Because I was in a panic. Our marriage was destroyed. Everyone knew about our problems. If they found out she was here in this house, secretly caring for a child..." Arthur paused, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "They would think I did something terrible." "So you decided to bury her here?" "I couldn't think straight. I just knew I had to protect her memory, protect myself. I spent the night digging there." He pointed to the daisy bed. "I planted the flowers the next day before locking up the house and never coming back." Helen walked to the flower bed and knelt, examining the soil. "And Lily saw all of this?" "She must have been hiding in the house that night. Genevieve used to leave her here when Cordelia visited during the day, but that night..." Arthur shook his head. "I never thought a child could have witnessed that." "Where was Genevieve?" "I don't know. Cordelia just said she sometimes traveled, leaving Lily in her care for a few days." At that moment, Helen's cell phone rang. It was from the support house. "Helen, you need to come back urgently," said the voice of the shelter's director. "A man was here looking for Lily, said he's her family." "What man? Did he identify himself?" "Julian Monroe, said he's the girl's uncle." Helen felt her blood run cold. She looked at Arthur, who had turned even paler upon hearing his brother's name. "We're on our way back now," she said, ending the call. "Julian was at the support house?" Arthur asked, standing up abruptly from the bench. "You didn't tell me you had a brother." "Julian is 2 years younger than me. We've always been rivals. He never accepted that our father left the mill to me in his will." As they rushed back to the car, Helen felt the situation was escalating rapidly. Why would he introduce himself as Lily's uncle? "I don't know, but I know my brother. Julian never does anything without a selfish reason behind it." During the drive back, Arthur revealed more details about his troubled relationship with Julian. The younger brother had always resented getting the smaller share of the family inheritance, and in recent years had been trying to find ways to contest their father's will. "Does he know about Cordelia?" Helen asked. "Officially, he believes the same story I told everyone else, that she went to Burlington and decided to start a new life." "And unofficially?" Arthur hesitated. "Julian has always been observant. He might have suspicions." When they arrived at the support house, the director greeted them with a worried expression. Julian Monroe brought documents claiming to be Lily's legal guardian. He said the girl's grandmother, Genevieve, appointed him as her guardian before she traveled. "Where is Lily now?" Helen asked urgently. "We managed to delay the situation by saying we needed to verify the documentation, but he promised to return tomorrow with lawyers." Arthur felt a rising fury take over his chest. "Where can I find my brother?" "Mr. Monroe, you need to calm down," Helen said. "If Julian really has legal documents—" "He's lying. Julian never knew Lily or Genevieve. There's something very wrong with this story." At that moment, Lily appeared at the office door, having once again escaped the caregiver's supervision. Her eyes were red from crying. "The man who came here today," she said in a trembling voice, "is the same one who made Grandma Genevieve cry. He gave her money and said bad things." Lily's revelation fell upon them like a bomb. Helen knelt beside the girl. "Lily, do you know the man who was here today? He always showed up at our house when Grandma Genevieve was sad. She was afraid of him and kept the money he gave her in a can under the bed." Arthur felt the pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together in a terrifying way. If Julian had known Genevieve for a long time, if he was giving her money, then he had known about Lily for much longer than he was letting on. "Helen," he said urgently, "I need to find Genevieve before Julian does something terrible. I have a feeling we're dealing with something much bigger than we imagined." Night was falling on Havenwood, and with it came the certainty that the next few days would bring revelations that would change everything forever. The search for Genevieve began before dawn. Arthur had spent the night investigating the records of the old house where Lily lived on Independence Street, while Helen used her social work contacts to track down possible leads on the whereabouts of the woman who had raised the girl. It was at the local police station that they got their first concrete lead. Detective Robert Foster, a 50-year-old man who knew every family in Havenwood, consulted the incident logs from the past few months. "Genevieve Miller filed a police report 3 months ago," he informed them, flipping through the papers. "She claimed to be threatened by a man she didn't want to identify, said she was being forced to leave town." "Did she give more details about the threats?" Helen asked. "Only that someone was demanding she keep a secret about a child, and that if she spoke, something bad would happen to the girl." Arthur felt his stomach churn. The evidence that Julian had been involved in the situation for much longer was accumulating in a disturbing way. "Detective," he said, "my brother Julian was at the support house yesterday claiming to be Lily's guardian. I believe he may be related to the threats against Genevieve." Robert Foster raised his eyebrows. He knew the Monroe family well and was aware of the tensions between the two brothers. "That's a serious accusation, Arthur. Do you have proof?" "Not yet, but I'm starting to put the pieces together." At that moment, the station door opened and Julian Monroe walked in with 2 well-dressed lawyers. He was a shorter man than Arthur, with graying hair and a constantly dissatisfied expression. When he saw his brother, his face hardened. "Arthur, what a surprise to find you here," Julian said with sarcasm. "I just came to regularize the situation of an orphan child who is under my responsibility." "Lily is not your responsibility," Arthur retorted, getting up from his chair. "I have documents that prove otherwise," Julian said, signaling for one of his lawyers to present the papers. "Genevieve Miller appointed me as the girl's legal guardian before she traveled." Helen examined the documents carefully. They seemed legitimate at first glance, but something bothered her. These papers were filed only 2 weeks ago. Why did it take you 3 months to claim guardianship? Bureaucratic issues, one of the lawyers replied coldly. My client was organizing the necessary documentation. And where is Genevieve now? Asked Detective Foster. She traveled to take care of sick relatives in rural Maine. There's no set return date. Arthur studied his brother's face, looking for signs of a lie. Julian had always been good at manipulating situations, but there was a tension in his eyes that suggested he was hiding something important. Julian, Arthur said directly, how did you know Genevieve? I've never heard you mention that name before. Not everything in my life is your business, brother. Genevieve sought me out months ago, when she learned I had the resources to help with the child's care. You gave her money? Julian's momentary silence was revealing. Humanitarian aid, something you should understand, given your position in the community. At that moment, Helen's cell phone rang. It was the support house again. Helen, Lily is very agitated. She said she needs to tell you something important about Grandma Genevieve. She's crying and asking to speak with you. We're on our way, Helen replied, ending the call. She looked at Julian. Mr. Julian, I suggest you wait until we fully resolve this situation before trying to remove the child from the shelter. I have legal rights, Julian insisted, and I intend to exercise them. Then we'll see you in court, Arthur said, leaving the station with Helen. During the drive to the support house, Arthur was visibly disturbed. Helen, I'm sure Julian is lying. He has never shown any interest in humanitarian causes. If he's involved with Lily, it's because he sees some advantage in it. What kind of advantage? I don't know yet, but I know my brother. He has always been envious of what I've built. If he found out something about Cordelia, about the yellow house. Do you think he knows about your wife's death? Arthur drove in silence for a few minutes before answering. Julian was always observant. If he ever followed Cordelia, if he found out about the house, about Lily. When they arrived at the support house, they found Lily hiding under a table in the activity room. The director explained that the girl had become extremely agitated since she learned Julian would be back for her. Lily! Helen called gently, crouching beside the table. We're here. You can come out. The girl crawled out, her eyes red from crying. When she saw Arthur, she ran to him and clung to his legs. He can't take me, she sobbed. He's mean. He made Grandma Genevieve go away. Arthur picked her up, feeling a paternal protectiveness that surprised him. What do you mean, Lily? What are you trying to say? The bad man told Grandma that if she didn't leave and leave me behind, he would tell everyone about Aunt Cordelia. Grandma got very scared and said she had to protect me. Lily's words confirmed Arthur's worst suspicions. Julian knew about Cordelia and was using that knowledge to manipulate the situation to his advantage. Lily, do you remember anything else the bad man said? Helen asked. He said Grandma had to sign some papers or something bad would happen, and that I was going to live with him because he was from the rich family. From the rich family. He said he had a right to me because I was important to get his brother's things. Arthur felt anger burn in his chest. Julian was using an innocent child as a pawn in some scheme to harm him. But what exactly was the plan? Helen, I need to talk to you in private, he said, handing Lily to a caregiver. In the director's office, Arthur revealed his deepest suspicions. I think Julian found out about Cordelia's death and is using Lily to blackmail me. If he gets custody of her, he can claim the child is a witness to a crime. But that would be blackmail. Exactly. He might be planning to use Lily to force me to hand over my share of the family inheritance, or even to frame me for what happened to Cordelia. Helen felt a shiver. Mr. Monroe, if this is true, we need to find Genevieve urgently. She may be the only person who can testify about the threats and the blackmail. But where do we look? If Julian forced her to flee, she could be anywhere. At that moment, Lily appeared at the office door, having once again slipped away from supervision. "I know where Grandma Genevieve is," she said quietly. "What do you mean, sweetie?" Helen asked. "She taught me a secret place to hide when things got dangerous. She said if anything happened, she would be there waiting for me." Arthur knelt beside the girl. "Where is this place, Lily?" "It's a house for grandmas and grandpas far away. She showed me once when we went for a walk. She said it's called the Blossom Nursing Home." Helen knew the place. It was a nursing home in Maple Creek, a neighboring town that took in elderly people without proper documentation. If Genevieve was hiding there, it would be almost impossible to find her without Lily's help. "Lily," Arthur said, making a decision that would change everything, "would you like to help me find Grandma Genevieve?" The girl nodded vigorously, and in that moment, Arthur knew there was no turning back. He was officially involved in the fight to protect this child, and that meant facing his brother and all the buried secrets of the past. The journey to Maple Creek was tense and silent. Arthur drove with his hands tight on the steering wheel, while Helen tried to keep Lily distracted in the back seat with simple games and talk of her happy memories with Genevieve. The girl had insisted on bringing her small cloth bag, where she kept all her treasures: Cordelia's bracelet, a drawing she had made of the yellow house, and a faded photo of a smiling elderly woman. "That's Grandma Genevieve," Lily explained, showing the photo to Helen. "She always smiles when she sees me." The Blossom Nursing Home was on the outskirts of Maple Creek, an old two-story building surrounded by a well-kept garden. The light green painted facade and colorful flower boxes in the windows gave the place a welcoming appearance, but Arthur felt a growing anxiety as they approached. At the reception, they were met by Sister Benedicta, a middle-aged nun who ran the nursing home. When Lily saw her, her eyes lit up with recognition. "Sister Benny!" the girl shouted, running to hug the nun. "Lily, my dear," the sister replied, clearly moved. "Your Grandma Genevieve has been very worried about you." "So she is here?" Helen asked, feeling relieved. "She is, but the situation is complicated. Mrs. Genevieve arrived here 3 months ago in a state of great agitation. She said she was running from someone who was threatening to hurt her granddaughter." Arthur introduced himself. "Sister, I'm Arthur Monroe. I believe the man threatening Genevieve is my own brother." The sister studied the businessman's face carefully. Genevieve mentioned that name. She said the Monroe brothers had dangerous secrets and that one of them was using those secrets to blackmail innocent people. "Can I talk to her?" "Mrs. Genevieve is registered here under a false name. She fears for her safety, but perhaps seeing that Lily is well." Sister Benedicta led them through quiet corridors to a small room on the 2nd floor. She knocked gently on the door before opening it. "Genevieve, I've brought you a surprise." The 65-year-old woman sitting by the window turned slowly. When she saw Lily, her face transformed from despair to pure joy. "My sweet granddaughter!" Genevieve exclaimed, opening her arms. Lily ran to her, and the reunion was so emotional that even Arthur felt his eyes well up. Genevieve hugged the girl as if she never wanted to let go, whispering words of affection and apologizing for leaving her. "Grandma, why did you leave without me?" Lily asked, the question that had been torturing her heart for months. "Because bad men were threatening to hurt you if I didn't obey," Genevieve answered, looking directly at Arthur. "But you're his brother." "I'm Julian's brother, but I'm here to protect Lily, not to threaten her," Arthur said, approaching carefully. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened." Genevieve hesitated, but something in the sincerity of Arthur's gaze convinced her to speak. "Julian found out about Lily 6 months ago. He showed up at my house saying he knew about Mrs. Cordelia and the girl." How did he find out? He said he had followed your wife a few times and seen her visits to our house. He knew Mrs. Cordelia was raising Lily in secret. Helen made mental notes of every detail. And what did he want in exchange for keeping the secret? At first, just money. He paid $100 a month for me to keep Lily hidden and not tell anyone about Mrs. Cordelia's visits. Arthur felt a deep anger grow in his chest. Julian was blackmailing a poor elderly woman, using an innocent child as a bargaining chip. But then it changed? He asked. 3 months ago, Julian showed up different, more nervous, more demanding. He said things had changed and he needed legal guardianship of Lily. Why? Genevieve looked at the girl, who was distracted, looking out the window at the nursing home garden. He said Lily was a witness to something very important, and that if he had custody of her, he could use it against you. The pieces of the puzzle were fitting together in a terrifying way. Julian knew Lily had witnessed something on the night of Cordelia's death, and he planned to use it to destroy Arthur. Genevieve, Arthur said calmly, I need to confess something. My wife Cordelia did die. It was an accident at the Yellow House, but I made the mistake of burying her there instead of reporting it to the authorities. The revelation didn't seem to shock Genevieve. I suspected. Mrs. Cordelia was very nervous in the last few weeks before she passed. She talked about confronting her husband, about important changes. Confronting him about what? About Lily. She wanted to tell you about the girl. She wanted you to adopt her officially. She said you had a right to know you had a daughter, even if not by blood. The revelation hit Arthur like a lightning bolt. Cordelia wasn't running from him that night. She was coming to face him, to bring the child who could have saved their marriage. But why did she keep Lily a secret before? Because she knew how badly you would react to the news about your condition. She wanted to be sure the child was healthy and settled before introducing her to you. Lily turned from the window and walked over to Arthur. Uncle, Aunt Cordelia talked a lot about you. She said you were a good man who was sad because you didn't have any little children. The child's innocence broke Arthur's heart. Cordelia had planned to give him exactly what he most desired, and he never knew. Genevieve, Helen said, do you have any proof of Julian's blackmail? Anything we can use to protect Lily? The elderly woman stood up and went to a small drawer in the room. She took out a yellowed envelope. I kept all the letters he sent me with the threats, and I have the receipts for the payments he made. Arthur examined the documents. They were clear evidence of extortion and blackmail. Julian had been reckless, leaving a written trail of his crimes. With this, we can stop him from getting custody, Helen said with relief. But there's still a problem, Genevieve said sadly. Julian knows where I am now. Yesterday, one of the staff members here told me a man had been asking for me. He was here? Not yet, but he'll come? And when he does? Genevieve looked at Lily with fear in her eyes. I'm very afraid of what he might do. At that moment, as if fate were orchestrating an inevitable meeting, they heard the sound of cars arriving in the nursing home's outer courtyard. Arthur looked out the window and saw Julian getting out of a black car, accompanied by the same lawyers from the police station. He's here, Arthur murmured, feeling his heart race. Grandma, Lily said, sensing the tension in the air, did the bad man come to get me? Don't worry, my dear, Genevieve said, hugging the girl. This time, we won't let him scare us. But everyone in the room knew that the final confrontation was about to begin, and that the outcome would determine not only Lily's future, but also whether the truth about all the buried secrets would finally come to light. The sound of footsteps in the nursing home hallway echoed like war drums. Sister Benedicta had tried to bar Julian's entry, but the lawyers presented documents authorizing them to retrieve Lily from the premises. The tension in the room was palpable when the knocks on the door finally came. Genevieve Miller, open this door. We know you're in there, Julian shouted from the hallway. Arthur positioned himself between the door and Lily, who had hidden behind Genevieve. Helen, I need you to document everything that's about to happen here, he whispered. The social worker nodded, readying her phone to record. It was irregular, but under the circumstances, any evidence would be crucial. Julian, come in, Arthur said, opening the door. His younger brother entered the room, followed by the lawyers, his eyes quickly scanning the environment until they found Lily. A cold smile appeared on his face. I thought I'd find you here, brother, Julian said, always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. I'm protecting a child from a blackmailer, Arthur replied coldly. Blackmailer? What an interesting accusation. Julian approached Genevieve. Mrs. Genevieve, you disappeared right when I needed to regularize the girl's situation. Very convenient. And I ran away because you threatened me, Genevieve said, her voice trembling but firm. You said if I didn't hand over Lily, you would tell everyone about Mrs. Cordelia. Tell them what about Cordelia? Asked one of the lawyers, clearly unaware of the details. Julian shot a warning look at Genevieve. You're confused, Mrs. Genevieve. Advanced age sometimes causes these memory lapses. My memory is perfect, the elderly woman retorted, pulling the envelope with the letters from her pocket. And I have proof of everything. Julian's expression changed instantly when he saw the documents. Those papers prove nothing. They prove you've been extorting an elderly woman for months, Helen said, examining the letters. Here is your signature on every payment receipt. Humanitarian aid, Julian said quickly. I was helping a family in need. With written threats? Arthur asked, reading one of the letters. If you don't keep the girl away from my brother, everyone will know what happened to Cordelia in the Yellow House. The ensuing silence was deafening. The lawyers exchanged uncomfortable glances, realizing they had entered far more dangerous territory than they had imagined. Mr. Julian, one of them said, I believe we need to reevaluate our legal strategy. We're not going anywhere, Julian said, his mask of civility finally slipping. This child is coming with me today. Why? Asked Arthur. What do you really want with Lily? Julian looked at the girl, who was clinging to Genevieve's skirt, trembling with fear. She's the key to everything, brother, to your ruin and my rise. Explain yourself. Lily saw you bury Cordelia, Julian said with a cruel smile. A 4-year-old witness might not seem like much, but when she grows up and I properly guide her on what she really saw that night. The revelation hit everyone in the room like a bomb. Julian wasn't just blackmailing for money, he was planning to use Lily as a long-term weapon against his own brother. You're monstrous, Helen said, horrified. I'm practical, Julian replied. Cordelia died in the Yellow House. Arthur buried her in the yard, and this child witnessed everything. With her under my guardianship, I can ensure my brother never interferes with the family business again. Lily began to cry, not fully understanding the adult's words, but feeling the fear and anger in the air. I want to stay with Grandma Genevieve, she sobbed. It's not your choice, child, Julian said, taking a step toward her. It was in that moment that Arthur made the decision that would change everything. Julian, stop! You want to know the truth about that night? I'll tell you. Arthur, no, Helen whispered, but he ignored her. Cordelia died in an accident. She fell down the stairs of the Yellow House and hit her head. When I got there, she was already gone. And you decided to bury her to hide the crime, Julian said triumphantly. It wasn't a crime, Arthur said firmly. It was panic, fear, but mostly it was love. Love? Cordelia was going to tell me about Lily that night. She wanted us to adopt the girl together. The accident happened when she was going up the stairs to get Lily's documents from the room upstairs. Julian hesitated. This version of the story didn't fit his blackmail plans. You're lying." "I'm telling the truth," Genevieve said unexpectedly. "Mrs. Cordelia told me about her plans. She was going to confess everything that night." "And even if it were true," Julian said, regaining his composure, "you still buried the body illegally. It's still a crime." "Yes, it is," Arthur admitted, "and I'm willing to face the consequences, but I will not allow you to use an innocent child for your schemes." At that moment, Sister Benedicta entered the room, accompanied by two men in uniform. "I called security," she announced. "This situation is disturbing our residents." "Perfect," Julian said. "Security can witness that I came to pick up a child under my legal guardianship." "Actually," Helen said, showing her phone, "they can witness your entire confession about blackmail and extortion. I recorded everything." Julian's face turned pale. "That recording is illegal." "Perhaps, but the letters you wrote to Genevieve are not, and they clearly prove your criminal intentions." One of the lawyers approached Julian. "Sir, we need to get out of here immediately. This situation could have serious legal consequences for you." "I'm not leaving without the child," Julian insisted. "Yes, you are," Arthur said, placing himself firmly between his brother and Lily. "And if you try to approach her again, I will go to the police myself and tell them the whole truth about Cordelia." "You wouldn't do that. It would be your ruin." "It would be my redemption," Arthur corrected. 5 years of carrying this weight is enough." Julian looked around the room, realizing he had lost all advantage. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and his own lawyers were clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "This isn't over," he said, heading for the door. "Oh, yes, it is," Helen said. "I will deliver all this evidence to the proper authorities today." After Julian and the lawyers left, the room fell silent. Lily finally came out from behind Genevieve and walked over to Arthur. "Uncle," she said in her small voice, "you're not bad like him?" Arthur knelt beside the girl. "No, Lily. I made mistakes, but I would never hurt you. Aunt Cordelia said you were good on the inside, just sad." The child's words touched something deep in Arthur's heart. "Lily, if you want, I would very much like to take care of you, together with Grandma Genevieve." The girl looked at Genevieve, who nodded with tears in her eyes. "Can we be a real family?" "We can try," Arthur said, hugging her. But even in that moment of hope, everyone knew that the coming days would bring enormous challenges. The truth about Cordelia would have to come out, and Arthur would have to face the consequences of his past choices. The return to Havenwood was marked by a different tension than the trip out. Arthur drove in silence, processing the decision he had made to confess everything to the authorities. In the back seat, Lily slept nestled between Helen and Genevieve, finally safe beside the people who loved her. It was almost night when they arrived at the police station. Detective Robert Foster was waiting for them, having been informed by Helen about the case's developments. The expression on his face was serious but compassionate as Arthur entered his office. "Arthur, Helen told me about the situation. Are you sure you want to do this?" Robert asked. "I am. 5 years is too long to carry this weight," the businessman replied. "And most importantly, I can't let my brother use Lily as a weapon against me." Genevieve stayed with Lily in the waiting room while Helen accompanied Arthur during the deposition. For 3 hours, he meticulously recounted the events of that fateful night 5 years ago. "I arrived at the Yellow House around 11 at night. Cordelia had said she was going to Burlington, but something was bothering me. When I went in, I found the door open and her lying at the bottom of the stairs." "How did you know she was dead?" Robert asked, taking notes. "There was no pulse, a lot of blood. Her head had hit the stone steps." Arthur paused, reliving the moment. "I panicked. Our marriage had deteriorated. Everyone knew it. If they found out she died on my property in a house I kept secret." "Why did you keep the house a secret?" "It was an inheritance from my father that Julian always wanted. He didn't know I still owned it. Robert made more notes. And the decision to bury her. It was desperation, pure desperation. I spent the night digging in the yard, planted flowers the next day. I thought no one would ever find out. But there was a witness. Lily. She must have been hiding in the house when it all happened. Cordelia took her there regularly, but I didn't know that at the time. After the deposition, Robert consulted some colleagues about the legal procedures. The case was complex. Technically, Arthur had committed concealment of a corpse and illegal burial, serious crimes. But the extenuating circumstances and the time that had passed complicated the situation. I'll need to exhume the body to confirm the cause of death, Robert said. If it was really an accident, as you claim, that will weigh in your favor. I understand, Arthur said. Do what's necessary. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, Lily had woken up and was drawing on a piece of paper Genevieve had gotten from the reception. It was another bird, but this time it wasn't alone. There were other figures around it. It's our new family, she explained to Helen when she joined them. Me, Grandma Genevieve, and Uncle Arthur. You like Uncle Arthur, don't you? Helen asked. I do. He has sad eyes like Aunt Cordelia, but he's good, and he's not afraid of the bad man. When Arthur left the detective's office, he looked 10 years older, but there was a lightness in his shoulders that hadn't been there for a long time. And now? Genevieve asked. Now we wait, he said. Robert needs to investigate everything, exhume Cordelia's body, confirm my version of the facts. How long could that take? Weeks, maybe months, but until then, I need to resolve Lily's situation. He knelt beside the girl. Lily, would you like to stay with me and Grandma Genevieve while we sort everything out? Forever? She asked hopefully. If all goes well, yes, forever. In the days that followed, a strange but welcoming routine was established. Genevieve moved into the guest house on Arthur's property, and Lily got her own room, decorated with bird-patterned wallpaper she had chosen herself. Helen visited regularly to monitor the girl's adjustment and was impressed by the transformation of both Lily and Arthur. The child was more talkative, more smiley, and had started calling the businessman Daddy Arthur. But the peace was disturbed a week later when Julian showed up at Arthur's factory, accompanied by a different lawyer. I've come to offer a deal, he said, entering the office uninvited. I'm not interested in deals with you, Arthur replied coldly. You should be. I've discovered some interesting things about your past, brother. About dubious contracts at the factory, tax evasion. Are you making up accusations now? I'm being creative. If you don't give me custody of Lily, I will make your life a living hell. I will question every business decision you've ever made, every contract you've signed. The lawyer beside Julian looked uncomfortable, clearly not approving of his client's strategy. Julian, Arthur said calmly, I've already confessed everything to the police. I have nothing left to hide. Your threats have no power over me. Really? And what if I tell the whole town you killed your wife? Cordelia died in an accident, and when the investigation proves it, you'll look like the liar you've always been. Julian slammed his fist on the table. That child should be mine. I discovered her secret first. I deserve to profit from it. The words revealed Julian's true nature. And even his lawyer stepped back slightly. Lily is not a commodity, Arthur said, standing up. She is a child who deserves love and protection. Love? You didn't even know she existed until last week, but I do now, and I will protect her from you for the rest of my life. At that moment, the office door opened, and Lily ran in, followed by Genevieve, who was trying to catch her. Daddy Arthur, Grandma said you were working, but I wanted to. The girl stopped when she saw Julian, and her face turned pale immediately. It's the bad man, she whispered, hiding behind Arthur. Hello, Lily, Julian said in a falsely sweet voice. "Remember me? I'm your Uncle Julian." "You're not my uncle," the girl said with surprising courage. "You made Grandma Genevieve cry and left me alone at the park. That's a lie." "It's not a lie," Lily shouted, her voice echoing through the office. "You're mean. You said if Grandma didn't go away, you would hurt everyone." The silence that followed was broken only by the girl's sobs. Arthur picked her up, feeling a protective fury burn in his chest. "Get out," he said to Julian, his voice low but threatening. "Arthur, get out!" Julian hesitated for a moment, but something in his brother's eyes convinced him he had crossed every line. He left the office, followed by the lawyer, who was muttering something about re-evaluating strategy. "Daddy Arthur," Lily said between sobs, "is he going to take me away?" "Never," Arthur promised, hugging her tightly. "I will never let anyone take you from me." That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Arthur and Genevieve talked for a long time on the house's porch. "Mr. Arthur," Genevieve said, "there's something I need to tell you about Mrs. Cordelia and Lily." "What is it?" "Mrs. Cordelia wasn't the first person to find Lily. The girl was abandoned at the hospital when she was a baby. I worked there as a volunteer and fell in love with her. I took her home without official authorization." Arthur felt his heart race. "You kidnapped Lily." "I saved her. The hospital was going to transfer her to an overcrowded orphanage. She was sick. She needed special care. I took her home and cared for her until she was well. And Cordelia found out. She found me one day by chance. But instead of reporting me, she started to help me. She said Lily was exactly what you two needed to save your marriage." The revelation changed everything again. Lily wasn't just an abandoned child Cordelia had found. She was a child Genevieve had saved, and whom Cordelia had specifically chosen to be their daughter. "That's why Julian is so interested in her," Arthur murmured. "If he finds out the whole truth." "He might try to use it against us," Genevieve agreed. That night, Arthur realized the fight for Lily's custody was just beginning, and that the secrets of the past were deeper and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The exhumation of Cordelia's body took place on a grey April morning, 3 weeks after Arthur's confession. The businessman was not present. Robert had deemed it inappropriate, but he anxiously awaited the results of the medical examination at home, which would determine his fate. Lily played in the garden with Genevieve, oblivious to the tension hanging over the house. In recent weeks, she had blossomed remarkably. Her nightmares had diminished, her appetite returned, and she laughed with a frequency that deeply touched Arthur's heart. "Daddy Arthur," she said, running to him with a drawing in her hands, "I made a portrait of our family." The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands in front of a large house, Arthur, Genevieve, and herself, but there was a 4th, fainter figure floating above them. "Who is this person up here?" Arthur asked gently. "It's Aunt Cordelia. She's watching over us from heaven," Lily replied naturally. The child's simplicity in dealing with such complex concepts always surprised Arthur. She had integrated Cordelia into her new family reality in a way that not even the adults could manage. The phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Robert. "Arthur, I need you to come to the station. We have the results of the autopsy." The businessman's heart pounded. "And?" "Come in person. There are other people here who need to hear this too." During the drive to the station, Arthur tried to prepare himself for any possibility. If the autopsy contradicted his version, he would face much more serious charges. If it confirmed it, he would still have to answer for the illegal burial. At the station, he found an unexpected scene. Besides Robert, Helen, a public prosecutor he didn't know, and to his surprise, Julian, accompanied by 2 different lawyers than before, were present. "What is my brother doing here?" Arthur asked. Mr. Julian requested to be present during the presentation of the results, the prosecutor explained, as an interested party in the case. Interested party? He filed a motion challenging your confession, Robert said gravely. He alleges you're lying to cover up a more serious crime. Julian smiled coldly. I always knew you were capable of anything to protect your reputation, brother, but I didn't imagine you'd invent such an elaborate story. The prosecutor opened a folder with the autopsy results. Mr. Arthur, the forensic medical analysis confirms that Cordelia Monroe died of head trauma caused by a fall. The injuries are consistent with an accident. There are no signs of external violence. Arthur felt his legs go weak with relief. So your version of the facts is correct, the prosecutor confirmed. Your wife died in a domestic accident. But that doesn't exempt him from other charges. One of Julian's lawyers interjected, concealment of a corpse, illegal burial, falsifying information. And there's something else, Robert said, consulting other papers. During the investigation, we discovered evidence that someone was in the yellow house after Cordelia's death. Arthur frowned. What do you mean? Footprints different from yours, objects disturbed. Someone else was in the house that night or in the following days. Julian shifted in his chair, an almost imperceptible tension passing over his face. Furthermore, Robert continued, we found some of Cordelia's personal belongings that were not with the body. Jewelry, documents, as if someone had been looking for something specific. What kind of documents? The prosecutor asked. Adoption-related papers. Cordelia was trying to regularize Lily's legal situation. The revelation dropped like a bomb in the room. Arthur immediately understood the implications. If Cordelia was processing an official adoption, it meant she planned to make Lily legally her daughter. That would explain Mr. Julian's sudden interest in the child, Helen observed. If Lily became Cordelia's adopted daughter, a legal heir, she would have rights to the Monroe family inheritance, the prosecutor completed. Julian stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. I knew nothing about any adoption. But you knew about the papers Cordelia kept in the yellow house, Robert said calmly. That's why you revisited the site after her death. I never. Mr. Julian, the prosecutor interrupted, your footprints were identified in the analysis. You were in the house after your brother buried Cordelia. The ensuing silence was tense. Julian looked around like a cornered animal, searching for an exit. All right, he said finally. I went to the house a few days later, but only because I suspected Arthur was hiding something. And what did you find? Robert asked. The adoption papers. Cordelia was trying to make that orphan a legal heir of the family. And you stole those documents? I protected the family's interests. That girl has no right to our inheritance. Julian's words revealed his true motivations. He wasn't interested in protecting Lily. He was trying to prevent her from becoming a legitimate heir. Mr. Julian, the prosecutor said sternly, by removing documents from a crime scene, you committed obstruction of justice, and your months of blackmail against Genevieve Miller constitute extortion. Those are just misunderstandings. We have the handwritten letters from you, Helen said, presenting the evidence. Your own confession recorded at the nursing home. Julian understood he had completely lost control of the situation. His lawyers whispered urgently in his ears, clearly advising him to cooperate. There's one last thing, Robert said, looking directly at Arthur. Cordelia left a letter. We found it hidden in her room in the yellow house. A letter? Robert handed him a yellowed envelope with Cordelia's delicate handwriting on the front. For my beloved Arthur. With trembling hands, Arthur opened the letter and read it in silence. His expressions changed from anxiety to surprise, then to deep emotion. Tears began to stream down his face. What does it say? Helen asked gently. Arthur wiped his eyes before answering. She asks for my forgiveness for keeping Lily a secret. She says she found the child we always dreamed of having and that she wanted to be sure I would accept her before revealing everything. He paused, too moved to continue for a moment. She says Lily was our second chance at happiness, that she loved me despite our problems and that she hoped we could rebuild our family with the girl. And about that night, Robert asked. She says she was coming to tell me everything, that she had prepared all the adoption papers and finally had the courage to introduce me to our daughter. The tragic irony of the situation struck everyone in the room. Cordelia had died on the very night she intended to bring together the family she had always dreamed of. Mr. Arthur, the prosecutor said after a long silence, considering the extenuating circumstances, your cooperation with the investigation, and the results of the autopsy, we will not be pressing criminal charges against you, but there are civil matters to resolve regarding Lily's situation. What kind of matters? The adoption Cordelia was processing can be transferred to you, if you wish. And considering that Julian committed crimes against the child and against Genevieve Miller. Arthur looked at his brother, seeing in him no longer a rival, but a small man defeated by his own greed. I want to adopt Lily, he said firmly. I want to honor Cordelia's last wish and give the girl the family she deserves. And what about me? Julian asked, his voice small and defeated. As for you, the prosecutor said, you will face formal charges for extortion, blackmail, and obstruction of justice. I suggest you cooperate fully if you want to avoid a more severe sentence. When they left the station, Arthur felt as if a new life were beginning. Finally, after 5 years of guilt and secrets, he had found the way to honor Cordelia's memory and build the family she had always dreamed of giving him. 2 months had passed since the revelations at the police station, and life in Havenwood was beginning to find a new rhythm. Arthur had initiated the legal process to officially adopt Lily, while Julian faced the consequences of his crimes in a court case that dragged on through the Vermont courts. The transformation in Lily's life was remarkable. The girl who once lived on the streets now attended a private school, had proper clothes, and most importantly, smiled with a frequency that charmed everyone around her. Genevieve had moved permanently onto Arthur's property, occupying a small cottage in the garden that he had renovated especially for her, but not everything was smooth sailing. On that June morning, Helen arrived at Arthur's house with a worried expression on her face. She found him having breakfast with Lily and Genevieve on the porch overlooking the mountains. I need to talk to you about something urgent, she said, after greeting everyone. What happened? Arthur asked, noticing the tension in her voice. The hospital in Burlington contacted me yesterday. They are conducting an audit of old cases of missing children, and Lily's name appeared on the list. Genevieve turned visibly pale. Did they find out I took her? Not yet, but they are investigating. And there's more. They found records that Lily's biological parents may be alive. The silence that followed was charged with tension. Lily, who was drawing in a notebook, looked up, sensing that something important was being discussed. My birth parents are alive? She asked with her usual innocence. We don't know yet, my dear, Helen said carefully. But some people are looking for information about you. Does this change anything? Arthur asked, feeling a growing anxiety. Legally, if the biological parents are alive and want to reclaim their daughter, the situation will become very complicated. Especially considering that Lily was technically kidnapped from the hospital. Genevieve began to cry silently. I just wanted to save her. She was sick. They were going to send her to an overcrowded orphanage where they wouldn't have been able to care for her properly. I know, Genevieve, and your intentions were pure. But now we have to deal with the legal consequences. That afternoon, while Lily played in the garden under the care of a nanny Arthur had hired, the three adults gathered in the office to discuss the situation. "What's the worst-case scenario?" Arthur asked. "If the biological parents show up claiming their daughter, Genevieve could be charged with kidnapping, and you could lose custody of Lily," Helen answered with brutal honesty. "And the best-case scenario? That the parents have legally renounced their rights to her, or that they cannot be located. In that case, your adoption can proceed normally. How much time do we have? The hospital audit should take a few weeks. But Arthur, there's something else you need to know." Helen's expression became even more grave. "Julian found out about the hospital's investigation. He's trying to use this information to reverse his legal situation." "How so?" "He's claiming that he was manipulated by you and Genevieve, that he didn't know he was involved in a case of child abduction. He's trying to present himself as a victim of the situation." Arthur felt anger burn in his chest. He has no limits. His lawyers are arguing that Julian's blackmail attempts were legitimate efforts to protect the rights of a kidnapped child. It's a desperate strategy, but it might work. At that moment, they heard screams from the garden. The three ran outside to find Lily hiding behind a tree, while the nanny tried to calm her down. "What happened?" Arthur asked, picking the girl up. "A car stopped in front of the house," the nanny explained. "Two people got out and started taking pictures. When I asked what they were doing, they said they were journalists investigating the case of the kidnapped child." "Journalists?" Helen murmured. The story leaked. "Daddy Arthur," Lily said, clinging to his neck, "they said I shouldn't be here, that my real parents are looking for me." Arthur's heart broke, seeing the fear in the eyes of the child he had learned to love as his own daughter. "Lily, look at me," he said, sitting with her on the garden bench. "No matter what happens, I will always fight to take care of you. Do you understand that? But what if my birth parents take me away? Then we'll hope they are good people who love you as much as we do. But I don't want to leave. You are my family now." Genevieve approached and stroked the girl's hair. "My dear, sometimes life puts us in difficult situations, but true love never disappears, no matter the distance." That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Arthur received a call that would change everything again. It was from the Burlington Hospital. "Mr. Monroe, this is Dr. Matthews, director of Santa Casa Hospital. I need to inform you that we have located the complete records of Lily Anderson. And her biological parents are indeed alive. Carmen and John Anderson from Burlington. They never stopped looking for their daughter." Arthur felt the world crumble around him. Do they want to get her back? They are on their way to Havenwood right now. They arrive tomorrow morning. How did they know where to find her? The hospital investigation led to them. Apparently, Lily had been admitted with severe pneumonia as a baby, and during the confusion of a medical emergency, she ended up being listed as missing. They thought she had died. Exactly. For 4 years, they believed they had lost their daughter. You can imagine the shock of finding out she is alive and well. After ending the call, Arthur sat heavily in his armchair. In a few hours, he would meet Lily's real parents, the people who had more right to her than anyone else in the world. Genevieve entered the office, seeing the devastated look on his face. "I heard about the call. What are we going to do?" "I don't know," he admitted. "For the first time in years, I don't know what the right decision is. The right decision is always what's best for Lily," Genevieve said, with the wisdom of someone who had dedicated her life to caring for the girl. "What if they are bad people? What if they don't know how to love her as she deserves? And what if they are wonderful people who suffered for 4 years, thinking they had lost their daughter forever?" Arthur knew Genevieve was right. Regardless of his personal feelings, Lily had the right to know her real parents, But that didn't make the situation any less painful. In the early morning, he went to check on Lily and found her awake, looking out the window at the stars. "Why aren't you sleeping, my dear?" "I'm making a wish to the stars," she said. "I'm asking that if my birth parents are good, they'll let me keep loving you too." The child's simplicity, her ability to accept complex situations with a pure heart, deeply touched Arthur. In that moment, he knew that regardless of what tomorrow brought, Lily would always be his daughter in his heart. The morning of the meeting dawned overcast, with a fine drizzle that mirrored the tension hanging over Arthur's house. Lily had woken up earlier than usual and was sitting on the porch, watching the road that led to the property. Her small hands held tightly to Cordelia's bracelet, a talisman that gave her courage in difficult times. "Daddy Arthur," she said, when he joined her on the porch, "do you think my birth parents are pretty?" "I'm sure they are, my dear. You get your beauty from someone," he replied, trying to keep his voice calm despite the emotional storm he was feeling. Genevieve appeared with a tray of coffee, but her hands were trembling slightly. The three of them had spent a practically sleepless night, each dealing with their own fears and hopes about what was to come. At 10 in the morning, 2 cars entered the property. In the first, Helen was accompanied by a representative from Child Protective Services. In the second, a couple that Arthur immediately recognized as Lily's parents. The physical resemblance was undeniable. Carmen Anderson was about 30 years old, with brown hair like her daughter's and large eyes that reflected years of suffering and hope. John Anderson was a simple man, with calloused hands that denoted manual labor, wearing his best clothes for this special moment. When they got out of the car, they both looked around the property with a mixture of admiration and intimidation. It was clear they came from a very different socio-economic reality than Arthur's. "My goodness," Carmen whispered, looking at the imposing house. "Our daughter lived here." Lily, who had hidden behind Arthur when she saw the strangers, peeked out curiously. There was something familiar about that woman that stirred her deepest memories. "Lily," Helen said gently, "these are Carmen and John. They've traveled a long way to meet you." The girl slowly came out from behind Arthur, studying the visitors' faces. Carmen immediately knelt, tears streaming down her face. "My God," she murmured, "it's really her, our little one." "Are you my birth mother?" Lily asked, with the typical frankness of childhood. "I am, my daughter. I'm your mommy." John, who had remained a few steps behind, also approached. His eyes were red with restrained emotion. "Lily, honey, you can't imagine how much we looked for you." "You looked for me?" "Every day for the last 4 years," Carmen said, trying to control her crying. "We never stopped hoping you would come home." Arthur watched the scene with a mixture of pain and admiration. It was impossible not to be moved by the genuine emotion of these parents who had suffered so much. "Why did I leave your house?" Lily asked, her childlike curiosity naturally handling the complex situation. John looked at Genevieve, who had remained silent, watching everything from a respectful distance. "You got very sick when you were a baby. We had to take you to the hospital, and when we came back to get you, they said you had disappeared." "The confusion happened during an emergency at the hospital," the CPS representative explained. "Several patients were transferred in a hurry, and the records got lost." "We thought you had, that we had lost you forever," Carmen said, her voice breaking. Lily processed this information with the seriousness a 4-year-old could muster. Then, surprisingly, she approached Carmen. "Did you cry a lot?" she asked. "A lot, my daughter. Your daddy and I cried every day. Grandma Genevieve also cried sometimes. When I asked about my birth parents." Genevieve finally approached the group. "Carmen, John," she said with a choked voice, "I need to ask for your forgiveness. I took Lily from the hospital when I was a volunteer there. She was sick, and they were going to transfer her to a place where she wouldn't get the care she needed. Carmen looked at Genevieve, and instead of the anger everyone expected, her eyes showed gratitude. "You saved our daughter." "What do you mean?" "The orphanage they were going to take her to had a meningitis outbreak 2 weeks later. Several children died from lack of proper medical care." The silence that followed was filled with a deep understanding. Genevieve unknowingly had saved Lily's life. "Where did you live at that time?" Arthur asked. "In a slum in Burlington." John answered honestly. "I was unemployed. Carmen worked as a maid. We didn't have money for private treatment when Lily got sick. And now I have a steady job in construction. We have a small but clean and safe apartment. We saved every penny for the last few years to give our daughter a better life when we found her." The couple's humility and determination deeply touched Arthur. They were simple people, but their hearts were in the right place. "Lily," Carmen said carefully, "would you like to come see our house? See where you were born?" The question everyone had feared was finally asked. Lily looked at Arthur, then at Genevieve, and finally at her biological parents. "Can I bring Grandma Genevieve and Daddy Arthur with me?" The innocence of the question made everyone smile through their tears. Carmen looked at Arthur with an expression that mixed gratitude and something more. "Mr. Arthur," she said, "Helen told us how you took care of our daughter, how you protected her. We have no words to thank you. You don't need to thank me. I love Lily as if she were my own daughter, and she loves you too. We can see that." John approached Arthur. "Sir, we're first-time parents, right? We lost 4 years of our daughter's life. Would you be willing to help us raise her?" The proposal took everyone by surprise. "What do you mean?" "Lily has 2 families now, the one that made her and the one that raised her. Maybe she doesn't have to choose between them." Helen spoke up. "It's an interesting idea. Shared custody is not uncommon in exceptional cases like this." "You would do that?" Arthur asked, hardly believing what he was hearing. "Our daughter is happy and healthy," Carmen said. "It would be selfish of us to take her away from everything she knows now, but we also want to be part of her life." Lily, who had heard everything, ran to the middle of the group and held out her small hands. "Can I have a big family?" "A very big one," said John, taking one of her hands, "with lots of people who love me." "So many people that you'll never feel alone," said Arthur, taking her other hand. In that moment, under the fine morning drizzle of Vermont, something extraordinary happened. 2 families that could have been rivals decided to unite for the good of a child. Carmen hugged Genevieve, thanking her for the dedicated care of her daughter. John shook Arthur's hand, recognizing in him a true father. And Lily, at the center of it all, smiled with the happiness of a child who finally understood that she would never be alone again. But there was still one obstacle to overcome. At that moment, a familiar car pulled up in front of the house. It was Julian, accompanied by his lawyers, coming to try one last desperate move to destroy the happiness that was being built. Julian's arrival shattered the harmonious atmosphere that had been established moments before. Lily immediately hid behind Carmen, recognizing the man who caused her so much fear. The Anderson couple looked confused at the situation, not understanding why the presence of this man had completely changed the mood. "How timely," Julian said with sarcasm, getting out of the car. "A family reunion without inviting me?" "You are not welcome here," Arthur said firmly, positioning himself between his brother and Lily. "On the contrary, brother, I came to inform our new friends about some important facts that you may have forgotten to mention." One of Julian's lawyers approached Carmen and John. "Are you the child's biological parents?" "We are," John replied, suspicious. "And who are you?" "I represent Julian Monroe, Lily's legal uncle. I came to inform you that the child was a victim of kidnapping and that the people who cared for her are involved in criminal activities." Carmen instinctively pulled Lily closer. "What do you mean?" "Genevieve Miller kidnapped your daughter from the hospital 4 years ago," Julian said, pointing at the elderly woman. "And my brother is being investigated for the suspicious death of his wife." "That's a lie," Lily shouted, surprising everyone with her vehemence. "Grandma Genevieve saved me, and Daddy Arthur never hurt anyone." "Child, you don't understand the complexities of the situation," the lawyer said condescendingly. "Yes, I do. Uncle Julian is the mean one. He made Grandma cry and left me alone at the park." Helen stepped forward. "Mr. Julian, you are violating a restraining order by approaching Lily." "The order was suspended when my lawyers presented evidence that the child is a victim of a criminal network," Julian retorted. "What evidence?" asked the CPS representative. "Child abduction, concealment of a corpse, document forgery, all documented and presented to the district attorney's office." Carmen looked frightened at Arthur. "Is that true?" Arthur took a deep breath. He knew this moment would come. "Carmen, John, there are things about the past you need to know, but not in the way Julian is presenting them." "Then tell us," John said firmly. "Genevieve did take Lily from the hospital without authorization, but it was to save her, and I was indeed involved in my wife's death, but it was an accident that I tried to hide out of panic." The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Carmen and John processed the information, clearly shocked. "See," Julian said triumphantly, "your daughter was raised by criminals." "But wait a minute," Carmen said slowly. "If Mrs. Genevieve hadn't taken our daughter from the hospital, she would have died in the meningitis outbreak," John completed, understanding. "You saved our daughter." "And what about your wife's death?" Carmen asked Arthur. "It was investigated by the police. They confirmed it was an accident. I just made the mistake of not reporting it immediately because I was in a panic." Julian saw his strategy failing. "You don't understand. These people manipulated your daughter, made her attached to them to hide their crimes." "It's not true!" Lily shouted again. "They really love me." At that moment, Carmen made a decision that surprised everyone. She approached Julian and confronted him directly. "Listen here, sir. I spent 4 years thinking my daughter was dead. When I found out she was alive and healthy, it was the happiest day of my life. But she—" "Let me finish." Carmen's voice was firm despite her tears. "I get here and find my daughter happy, well cared for, loved. I find an elderly woman who risked everything to save her, and a man who protected her as if she were his own daughter." "Carmen," one of the lawyers tried to interrupt. "And then you show up. This good man's brother trying to destroy my daughter's happiness for what? For greed, for envy." John joined his wife. "Our daughter is afraid of you. A 4-year-old child knows how to recognize who is good and who is bad." "You are being manipulated." Julian tried. "No, sir," John said firmly. "You are the one trying to manipulate us, and we won't allow it." Carmen turned to Helen. "What legal power does this man have over our daughter?" "None," Helen replied. "He tried to get guardianship through fraudulent documents. All legal proceedings against him are ongoing. Then we want him to stay away from our daughter, now." Julian saw his last card fail miserably. The presence of Lily's real parents, which he thought would be his salvation, had become his final defeat. "You will regret this," he said, signaling for the lawyers to return to the car. "The only thing we regret," John said, "is that our daughter went through so much fear because of you." After Julian left, the group stood in silence for a few moments. Lily, who had witnessed everything, approached her biological parents. "You're not going to take me away from Daddy Arthur and Grandma Genevieve?" she asked. Carmen knelt beside her daughter. "Lily, what do you want? Do you want to stay here or come live with us?" The question hung in the air. Lily looked around at all the people she loved. "Can I stay with all of you? Sometimes here, sometimes at your house?" "That's exactly what we want," Carmen said, hugging her. The CPS representative spoke up. "I can formalize a shared custody arrangement. Considering the unique circumstances of the case, I believe it will be approved by the judge." "And Mrs. Genevieve's legal situation?" Arthur asked. "With your testimony confirming that she saved Lily, and considering there was no malicious intent in her action, she will likely receive only a warning." Helen smiled. "And Julian? He will face all the charges. With your testimony today, his chances of avoiding a conviction are minimal." Genevieve, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, finally approached Carmen and John. I need to ask your forgiveness. I know I took your daughter, even if it was to protect her." Carmen hugged the elderly woman. "You don't need to ask for forgiveness for saving our daughter's life. But you lost 4 years with her because of me. And she had 4 years of love and care because of you," John said. "You are a blessing in Lily's life." At that moment, Lily ran to the center of the group and spread her arms, trying to hug everyone at once. "Now I have a birth mom and dad, a heart dad, a special grandma, and an Aunt Helen who takes care of me," she said, radiant. "And we all love you very much," Arthur said, picking her up. "Forever?" she asked. "Forever," they all confirmed in chorus. As the sun finally broke through the clouds, illuminating the house's garden, everyone knew that Lily would never be alone or afraid again. She had found not just one family, but a network of love that would protect her for the rest of her life. And for the first time in years, Arthur felt he had completely honored Cordelia's memory, giving Lily exactly what his wife had always dreamed of: a complete and loving family. 6 months later, Havenwood was preparing for a celebration that would be remembered for years. It was Lily's 5th birthday, but more than that, it was the day her official adoption would be finalized before the entire community. The party was being held at the local parish hall, an event that would bring together the two families and the entire town that had followed the girl's extraordinary story. Arthur woke up before dawn, as had become his habit since Lily entered his life. The house was quiet, but he could feel the energy of anticipation in the air. He went down to the kitchen and found Genevieve already preparing breakfast, her eyes shining with joy. "Big day today," she said, smiling. "The biggest of all," Arthur agreed. "Where's our birthday girl?" "Still sleeping. Carmen and John arrived yesterday and she stayed up late talking with them in the guest room. The shared custody routine had worked perfectly over the months." Lily spent 2 weeks with Arthur and Genevieve in Havenwood, and 1 week with Carmen and John in Burlington. The girl had adapted to both homes with the natural flexibility of childhood, and both families had learned to work together for her well-being. At 8 in the morning, Lily came running down the stairs, wearing pink pajamas that Carmen had brought as a gift. Her hair was messy from sleep, but her eyes shone with excitement. "Daddy Arthur, today is my special day." "It is indeed, my dear," he said, picking her up. 5 years old and officially becoming our daughter. Forever and ever, forever and ever. Carmen and John appeared in the kitchen, still in their sleepwear, but smiling. The relationship between the two families had evolved from cordial to genuinely affectionate. Carmen had become Genevieve's confidant, and John often helped Arthur with small repairs around the property during his visits. "Good morning, family," Carmen said, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Ready for your party?" "Very ready. Will Helen be there? And Sister Benedicta? And Detective Robert?" "All of them," John confirmed. The whole town will be there to celebrate our little one." During breakfast, Lily chatted excitedly about the party preparations, the presents she hoped to get, and especially about the fact that from that day on, she would officially be the daughter of two families. "Daddy John, Daddy Arthur," she said, using the names she had naturally developed to differentiate them. "Are you going to be friends forever?" "Forever," the two men confirmed simultaneously, exchanging a smile. In the afternoon, the parish hall was decorated with colourful balloons and banners that said, "Happy Birthday, Lily." The main table was filled with sweets and snacks, prepared by several families in town who had mobilised to make the day special. The first surprise came when Sister Benedicta arrived with a choir of children from the Maple Creek nursing home to sing for Lily. The second surprise was the presence of Dr. Matthews, the director of the Burlington Hospital, who had travelled especially to personally meet the girl whose story had touched his team so much. "Lily," he said, introducing himself, "I'm the doctor who took care of you when you were a baby. I came to thank you because your story taught us the importance of every child who passes through our hospital. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. When it was time for Judge Frank Carter to formalize the adoption, he made an announcement that no one expected. "Before we proceed with the ceremony," he said, "I would like to inform you that I received the final sentence today in the case against Julian Monroe." Silence fell over the hall. Arthur held Lily's hand, tense. "Julian Monroe has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for extortion, blackmail, and obstruction of justice. Furthermore, it has been determined that he pay compensation for the damages caused to the Anderson family and Mrs. Genevieve Miller." A collective sigh of relief echoed through the hall. Finally, the threat that had loomed over Lily's happiness had been definitively eliminated. "And now," the judge continued with a smile, "let's get to what really matters." The adoption ceremony was simple but emotional. Lily signed her name for the first time on an official document, trembling but meaningful letters. Carmen and John signed as biological parents consenting to the shared adoption, and Arthur signed as the adoptive father. "Lily Anderson Monroe," the judge proclaimed, "you are now officially the daughter of two families united by love." The hall erupted in applause. Lily, wearing a white dress that Cordelia would have loved to see her in, smiled radiantly at the center of the celebration. During the party, she circulated among the guests like a little hostess, telling everyone about her life with two families, two houses, and many people who loved her. "Aunt Helen," she said, approaching the social worker who had been instrumental in her journey, "thank you for helping me find my big family." "Thank you for teaching me that sometimes families form in unexpected ways," Helen replied, hugging her. When it was time to cut the cake, Lily insisted that all her parents hold the knife with her: Arthur, Carmen, John, and even Genevieve, whom she considered her special grandma mom. "Make a wish," they all said. Lily squeezed her eyes shut and whispered, "I wish that all the children in the world have families that love them like you love me." There wasn't a dry eye in the hall. Later, as the party was ending and guests began to leave, Robert Foster approached Arthur. "Arthur," he said, "I wanted you to know that your case has changed the way our station handles complex family situations. We've learned that not everything is black and white." "Thank you, Robert. And thank you for handling everything with such sensitivity." "Justice sometimes needs to be tempered with compassion," the detective replied. As night fell, the two families gathered on the porch of Arthur's house for a more intimate celebration. Lily was in Genevieve's lap, counting the presents she had received, when she made an observation that deeply touched all the adults. "Do you know why today was the best day of my life?" "Why, my dear?" Carmen asked. "Because now I know I'll never be alone again. Even when I grow up and get old, I'll always have a big family that loves me." Arthur looked up at the starry sky and mentally whispered a message to Cordelia. "We did it, my love. We gave her the family you always dreamed of." That night, when Lily finally fell asleep, surrounded by all her treasures and drawings depicting her expanded family, every adult in the house knew they had been part of something extraordinary. An abandoned child had become the center of a network of love that included biological parents, an adoptive father, a chosen grandmother, a dedicated social worker, and an entire community. And in the silence of the dawn, as Havenwood slept peacefully, Lily dreamed of colorful birds flying freely in the sky, knowing that she too was free to love and be loved by as many people as her heart could embrace. The girl who had once appeared at a wake accusing a stranger of burying someone had become responsible for unearthing the capacity for love in everyone around her. And in this collective transformation, they all discovered that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters. Not what separates us, but what unites us in unconditional love for a child who deserves all the happiness in the world.